Welcome to another Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm here to talk about Homer Eon Flint. Homer Eon Flint was an early science fiction fantasy writer, pre-Weird Tales. And that's why I'm getting to him, is that he never published anything in Weird Tales. He did have a posthumous story appear in Amazing Stories Quarterly in 1928, but while he was alive when Weird Tales started, he lived from 1888 to 1924. He did not publish any stories in Weird Tales. He is the youngest of 4 children born to Henry Flint and Emily Burkhart in Albany, Oregon. He was born September 9th, 1888, and his father was a shoemaker, which would be important because much of Flint's own living was not from his writing. His writing was more supplemental. His main source of income for most of his time was working with his brother at his brother's shoemaking shop, cobbler shop, in San Jose, California. The original spelling of his last name was F-L-I-N-D-T. He wrote under a last name where he dropped the D so that it would not appear to be Germanic, because remember, he started publishing during World War I, and there was a lot of anti-German sentiment, and he felt that that would weigh against him. Flint himself married Mabel Williams, who was a school teacher, and together they had 3 children. There is a lot about Flint's relationship with his wife and his children to be found in an essay written by Flint's own granddaughter, where she happens to have copies of all the letters written between Flint and his wife. There were so many letters because Flint was working with his brother in San Jose. His wife and kids were in another city. And back then, travel was not so easy, so he didn't get to see them all that often. So they wrote letters all the time to one another, mostly minutai about daily life. But it does show that he was very much a family man, very much in love with his wife and in love with his kids, and wished that he could be with them. And it's only economic circumstances that kept them apart. When he started writing, the first works he wrote were movie scenarios for Biographical Films, silent film company in the 19-teens. And that kind of dried up 1916, 1917. And so he started publishing fiction in 1918. Almost all of his work was sold to All Story Weekly, which was one of the Frank Munsey magazines, which later merged with Argosy. And he died at the age of 36 on March 27th, 1924, under mysterious circumstances. He had quit working with his brother at the cobbler shop so that he could go home and be with his wife. He had arranged to take a job driving what they described as stagecoach, but it's not the Old West kind of John Wayne stagecoach thing that we would think of. It was driving a car. You would have passengers, but you would also be going around delivering mail and, packages, whatever, through a defined route every day. And this was going to allow him to be able to be at home, spend time with his children, and spend time with his wife. So he was really looking forward to this. He left San Jose. He hired a cab, paid a cab to drive him all the way to the city where his wife and kids were living, but he never made it. The cab was found at the bottom of a 50-foot canyon, kind of a small canyon, and he was pinned under it. The cab hit him in the spine and killed him instantly. He would have felt nothing. The cab driver claimed that Flint robbed him and stole the cab and went off the road. But there are details that don't add up. And so there are a lot of people that doubt that Flint actually did this. And made doubly so by the fact that this cab driver was an unreliable witness. He'd been in prison more than once, at least one of those times for robbing one of his fares, an old woman. So this guy, he was a criminal, and he probably would have said anything to save his skin. And he made it look like Flint was the one that did this. That's one theory anyway. But nothing has ever been proven conclusively in that case. All that's known is he did die March 27, 1924. Some people have described Flint as the best writer of the group of fantastical fiction writers that was working during World War I and up to the time where Weird Tales started publishing. So that would include Austin Hall and Francis Stevens and Abraham Merritt are all part of this group. And that's how I got to where I decided to do a deep dive into Homer Eon Flint, is that I'm already going to do a deep dive into Austin Hall because he's appearing in Weird Tales. He sold his story to Weird Tales. And I decided to do a deep dive into Austin Hall. And Austin Hall and Homer Eon Flint collaborated on a novel called The Blind Spot, which is considered to be a classic. So I went and just looked into Homer Eon Flint, and I found out that he's an interesting character who has some very interesting writings. And like I say, some people consider him to be the best of that time period, the best writer of that time period of fantastical fiction. So that's what we're going to find out. We're going to read everything I can get my hands on by Homer Eon Flint, which is already proving difficult. His first story, The Planeteer, I didn't have any problems getting my hands on. I already had it in an ebook that I happen to have. The 26th Golden Age of Science Fiction Mega Pack, put out by Wildside Press, is all fiction of Homer Eon Flint. It's almost all of his fiction. The sequel to The Planeteer, however, is proving to be very difficult to get a hold of. It was printed in All Story Weekly, and I cannot get a copy of that original magazine so far. I have not found one available for print, available for sale anywhere. It was printed in two parts, in two separate issues of a fanzine not too long ago, and I have tracked down the second part, the issue with the second part of that story, and I have purchased that, but I'm not able to find the issue of that fanzine that has the first part in it. So I don't know if I'm going to get the whole story, and definitely not in time to be reading it and reporting on it. So that one may have to wait a bit until I can track down something more of the story, or maybe I'll get lucky. But I'm going through Homer Eon Flint's earliest works very quickly because I want to get up to The Blind Spot by a certain time, because I want to be back on track with my Weird Tales readings by the end of this year. So that's Homer Eon Flint. He's an interesting character. He seems to be worth investigating for anybody that is interested in the early science fiction stories, stuff that comes before Amazing Stories and before Weird Tales, and also anybody that is interested in the early pulp fiction I mean, you got to remember that the other writers that were publishing in the pulp magazines in the early part of the 1900s were the likes of William Hope Hodgson, and well, even H.G. Wells got his start in what were basically pulp. They weren't really pulp magazines specifically, but they were the precursors to these kinds of magazines. A lot of great fiction was published there. Edgar Rice Burroughs published in All Story and Argosy. This is the group of people that Homer Eon Flint is a part of, and that's why I wanted to investigate him in a deep dive. And I'm going to try to read everything I can get and report on it here, story by story, give you reviews, and tell you if it's worthwhile. I hope you'll come on back and watch the whole series with me. I'll be creating a Homer Eon Flint playlist, and you'll be able to follow through and go through his whole history. Obviously, it may be well, if you get a hold of that mega pack and then get a hold of a copy of The Blind Spot, you can probably read everything that I'm going to be able to read, unless I can get a hold of that second story, which I really want to. So come on back and check it out. Find out. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe buttons, and hit the bells that you'll be notified when these videos are coming out. And you'll see me in the whole series and many, many more things that Telltale Books does.